This is the Timers Playbook podcast, and I'm your host, Tepo Pule. I'm a father to two beautiful boys, lovely guys, but also hectic. Now, raising these guys has forced me to up my game in all areas of life, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Welcome to the Timers Playbook, and thank you for tuning in. The black father is not a homogeneous group. They go through different things, different stages.
It's diversity of stories. Not everybody's gonna be your friend. Not everybody
No,
you're
for
going to. You're gonna have some characters that you actually genuinely don't like.
No, Tessa, I think you're forgetting.
I'm just letting you.
No, baby. I'm a seasoned broadcaster. You forget this. I didn't start broadcasting Izolo because of podcasts. Sacrifice is always demanded.
Sure. There's nothing for Mahala, Baba. You have to give up something.
There's a certain school that does not want to admit my child because Ridula Hagal.
But let them be, let them play. I mean, and by you giving them chores, by you disciplining them, it's actually still letting them be.
I don't think society is ready for that conversation because you can't fix something without understanding the cause.
Yeah.
So we're like, let's fix this GBB thing, but we don't want to hear your excuses. But what you're calling an excuse is why it happened. And the fact that is not the why we're talking about. That's just a reaction that needs to be dealt with. Obviously, Hambia Chair.
Now, before you start listening to this episode, please subscribe to the podcast. And at the end of the episode, give us an honest rating. This helps improve our content so we can better serve you. Enjoy. Welcome to this episode of the Timers Playbook. We've got Suraiya Essof, educator, academic program developer, entrepreneur, and NPO founder. 40-something, married with with two sons, 11 and 14. All right, so Suraiya's joining us all the way from Zim. You said you're in Harare at the moment, and you said you represent your country. By the way, just before we kick off, for someone that's never been to Zim like myself, are you able just to sum up the country briefly? Give us a sense of what do you love about it and what do people need to know about it besides what's normally broadcast or documented about Zim.
No, I can't sum it up briefly. It is a mosaic of the darkest parts of humanity and the lightest, most joyous parts of humanity. It's everything. I mean, I'm a fan. That's why I'm still here.
Yeah.
We have our problems, I mean, I don't need to go into the problems that we have. I think it's all very well known, very well documented. It's all mostly true. But what's not given enough coverage is how amazing our people are. Really very caring. People care about each other. People care about the welfare of each other. Not as materialistic, I find, as other places in the world. Like we have different values here. Very peace loving. To a fault, I think sometimes maybe a bit too passive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the people are, what make it a country that's worth knowing. Besides, I mean, we do have beautiful spots. We've got the best weather.
Okay.
Very mild winters. Even our summers are hot, but not. You don't die in the heat, but yeah, I mean, we've got everything. But yeah, definitely, I would say the people are our greatest asset. Here, it's home. Yeah. It's home. Even with everything that comes with it.
Yeah, I think that's how we feel about South Africa. Great. Also, that's why we are all still here. In any case, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we invited you to the podcast today. As you know, a podcast is the Timers Playbook, where we deal with all things related to fatherhood and fathers and so forth. And I just thought your story was interesting because you work with businesses and young people alike. So there's almost like an intersection into some of the themes and the things that you deal with and touch on like in what you do in your professional, I suppose also personal life. But I just want to start here in terms of what sparked this curiosity in terms of being an educator and what led to this career path that you're on, and then briefly also just if you can sum up what is it that you do exactly.
Okay, so again, not a simple way to put it. I think as a teen, I had a very warped idea of what success looked like. I wanted a big title. I wanted to be in the medical field. And so I signed up for optometry at the time at the Rand Afrikaans University, which was the late 90s. And I registered and everything, and as luck would have it, on my first day in the optom faculty, I realized that all the courses were in Afrikaans. Okay. And there was no alternative for it in English. Unfortunately, the New South Africa hadn't caught up. And I said, well, I can't do this because, I can't suddenly learn a whole new language. So I was still registered at the university, and, my father said, just do a business degree. Indians, that's what we do. That's what we're good at. Do it for a year. Just try it out. I was devastated. Of course, I did business, a BCom, and I essentially failed my first year. I hated it. But for some reason, some miracle, I was still enrolled in the faculty, and I spoke to them there, and they said, for some miracle, for some reason, you're still enrolled, even though you failed. But search for a course within the BCom faculty that you think you can handle. It doesn't have all of these, subjects that you hate. And I'm flipping through. I mean, we didn't have much of Google at that time. And I saw something that said industrial psychology, and I thought, this looks interesting. I still have to do 1 year of economics, 1 year of accounts, 1 year of all these other subjects that, really didn't hold my interest. And I accidentally stumbled upon psychology. Again, not knowing anything. And I just found it so incredibly interesting. I graduated with distinction. I kind of made the honors roll, and I was from flunking out. It was very much about. I think that it in itself really made me realize you have to find your purpose and focus on your strengths. We often say focus on your weaknesses, with your spare time, focus on the things that you're weak on. Actually, no, focus on your strengths and let it lead you. Focus on your interests and your passions and let it lead you. And that's exactly what it did. So this is what brought me on the path of industrial psychology. Again, fate wasn't in my hands. When I returned to Zimbabwe, the only industrial psychology, human resource jobs I could get was in retrenchment, which I thought was incredibly depressing.
Yep.
So I got a job working at a school in their bursar's office. And while I was there, I discovered that the teachers at that school were having so much fun. And I thought, what am I doing? Why am I in an office? This is not me. And that kind of sparked my interest into teaching and just watching the way that they interacted. And I thought, this is actually what I want. And it just spoke to me. And again, all fate, like the universe just lined up. I wish I could tell you I had a clear vision. Everything was accidental and serendipitous. And so after that, I then got my postgrad, postgrad in education, and the rest is history. I've been a teacher ever since. I kind of brushed away this idea of being in a glamorous, having a list of letters behind my name, and found the most fulfilling passion. I love it. No regrets. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. So you touched on
So
yeah.
that's my.
Okay. So you touched on I think purpose or I think more for you it's going the long way around and eventually getting to it, right? And as a fairly
Yeah.
new parent myself, we're trying to get the kids to that realization at a much earlier age so that they can make their own decisions in terms of what they want to do with their lives. So in terms of this question of
Yeah.
purpose, I see it a lot on social media. But when I interact with parents, and I guess even me to an extent, the decisions we make for our kids, whether what school we send them to, homework, whatever it is, isn't necessarily purpose driven. It almost seems like it's about survival, and we, I guess, assuming that sending them to this school and doing that is going to give them the tools to help them to survive in the world, I guess. So my question then is, with everything
Yeah.
that's happening in both our countries and knowing how tough things can be, how do we even start with the conversation of purpose? For me, who's got the youngest is 7, and for other fathers listening that have got teenagers, that you know what, you just actually need skills so that you can survive, make money, and be able to look after yourself. Where does purpose even start to fit in?
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to refer to a concept called ikigai. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. Maybe your
Yes.
listeners have. It's a Japanese concept, and it's the intersection of doing what you're good at, doing what you love, doing something that is useful to the world, and doing something that you can get paid for. So all 4 of those aspects are very, very important. I mean, the last thing you want. I met a parent of an ex-student last night, and I said, "Is Lisa happy?" And she said, "That is such a strange question. Like,
Yes.
you're not asking me what is she doing, And I said, because I know her that whatever she did, she was going to be a success at it because she was a great student. She was very studious. She was very serious. What I want to know is she happy? And she said, you know what? She has found her way. She has found her purpose and she's found her passion and she's happy. To me, that is the most important thing. If I think about my students, I mean, I had this student, I taught her, she was in grade 7, 20 years ago. And, now she's in her 30s. To me, the most important thing, the bottom line is we want our kids to be happy. When they're happy, then they are productive. They're making a meaningful contribution to the world. They can make money, So, like I say this as a teacher, teachers are notoriously, but there are ways. There are ways where we can be innovative. We can be creative in the way that we approach our passion. It doesn't mean because you want to teach that you are only stuck to teaching in a classroom and you have to receive minimum teacher's wage. There are other ways so I think we also need to start approaching things differently and look at different perspectives and be creative about, okay, this is my passion. This is where it's leading me. But oh my goodness, I don't want to be stuck in an office. Oh my goodness, I don't want to be stuck in a classroom and getting paid so little. I still have these dreams. I still want to travel. I need money to do all of these big things. So it's important for us to not be very close-minded when it comes to shutting off. Like I call it chopping off branches. We chop off an entire branch of possibilities because we are held back by things like money, or oh yeah, in this country this is not a big thing. In this country it's not appreciated. We don't know, the world is ever changing. So taking that concept of ikigai now, if you look at them, the things individually, some kids don't know what they are particularly good at. Like a 7-year-old, you can say, okay, well, he's got skills in this, but they change. Their interests change, their skills change, the world changes along with it. So finding your purpose, I think, it's not an exact science, but I think what's important is for us to find things that resonate, or they find things that resonate with them. So you can sense that yourself in your child. When do they really light up? I mean, it's difficult in little kids. They light up at, shiny, flashy things, or it's the usual. Everybody wants to be a soccer player. Everybody wants to be, an astronaut or fireman or whatever. Yeah?
So in terms of us parents, then, what is our role? Because I'm hearing you talk, right? And even for me, like, I guess I would have to also start getting out of bed, excited about what I do and so forth. So I mean, they learn by what they see us do, more than what we tell them, right? Especially with my kids, when I see them, they tend to mimic a lot of my actions and less about my words. So it's a very difficult thing, because now when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, everything is just so operational now, right? And you speak of you like to encourage kids to be adventurous, right? And to be curious about the world. And us parents are not curious about the world, nor are we adventurous. Our world is in such a way that it's almost boxed in, right? That this must happen from the time you wake up to the time you come back. And then I go to work, I come back, I'm also tired. But you know what? I've given you a few hours at school. Hopefully you were able to learn something or inculcate your adventurous spirit while you were there, right? So with all of that and some of the restrictions that the parents might have, whether mentally, emotionally, but also resources, right? And I think a lot about this growth mindset amongst young children, to think beyond your current circumstance, because it won't be like that all the time. And that's dependent not entirely, but mostly on you and the people around you, or the kind of agency that you take. And like, can you really teach kids a growth mindset, like as a parent, if you yourself are caught up in your own world? And how would you do that?
Well, the thing with the growth mindset is we don't want to lie to our kids and say, you can become anything you set your mind to. Everybody wants the next Cristiano Ronaldo. Everybody wants the next, Beyonce or whatever it is. But there also needs to be that, that being realistic about what we promise our children, because it could have the opposite effect, and understanding, there are, we don't want to push them into paths where, it's going to become difficult later, where you say, my son is interested in wants to be an astronaut, and for real, he wants to do spaceships, and he wants to, he wants to do all of that. How on earth am me sitting in little Zimbabwe, how am I going to do it? So that's why I said we need to be creative. And I think what I'm trying to get, my bottom line to this, I mean, I could speak about this for hours. My bottom line in this is to listen to our children, and to let them lead us, but while we still guide them. So like I said, I mean, children are fickle. They kind of change their mind every 5 months. They change their mind. So yeah, obviously a growth mindset is important, but it obviously has its limitations. So when we say growth mindset, we're talking about things like stepping out of your comfort zone, step out of your comfort zone and try things. This is what we mean by a growth mindset. When a child has a fixed mindset, like, oh, I'm not sporty. I'm not going to come ice skating with you because I've got terrible balance. That is a fixed mindset. And so they don't even try. And what happens again is they're chopping these entire branches off of possibilities for them. They're missing out on all the fun. And it's the same with subjects at school. I'm not very arty. Oh, I'm not very, the the worst one is I'm not very good at English.
Oh, man.
And you're like, what? How are you going to communicate in life if you've already decided, I'm not a big reader, you know?
We didn't have teachers like
I
you, Suraiya. We didn't. I thought I was bad at maths. Like, I believed it. And the thing is, amongst our peers also, it was accepted that you should be better at maths, right? It's a thing. But I don't remember when I was in high school, and to your point, the role that also the larger community, whether it's educators or other parents, plays in this thing. I only understood later in life exactly what you're saying, that no one had ever said anything contrary to mathematics. They just said, this guy is a boffin, he can do it, nobody else can do it. No one ever said, no, it's like anything else. You apply yourself, you study every day, you can actually learn to do it. We didn't have that.
And ask for help.
Yeah.
Some of my high school students, in fact, all of my high school students have my personal WhatsApp number because they're too afraid in class to put their hand up and say, I don't get it. You know?
Yeah. And sometimes it's
amazing how much.
Because sometimes it's not just class, right? It's also it's human behavior. Like we do tend sometimes to be shy around the group when you know that you have questions, and there's different dynamics, right? There's confident kids, there's them not so confident, and there's all other dynamics that are happening in that group in any case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, a student is never in trouble when they're up. I mean, I remember being at school and I was actually scared to ask for help because I thought I was going to be in trouble. And sometimes you were, because the teacher would roll their eyes like, I don't have time for this. And, and not realizing that it was me and maybe 5 other people who also didn't get it. But one of us needed to be brave enough to say.
It normally is. Like, that's normally the case.
And the teacher is more worried about, can I finish this lesson in time? Can I do this? Can I do that? But these are the crucial things, encouraging them to ask for help. And throughout life, it's a life skill to ask for help.
Yeah.
Even as adults, even as, as leaders, you need help. There's nobody in this world that does not need the help of someone else. So it's also a very important skill to teach them that it's okay to ask for help. And speaking about growth mindset, it's okay to make mistakes. It's also okay to fail. We can't tell them that failure is not an option. Giving up is not an option. Failure is most definitely an option, but giving up is not an option. So if you fail at something, that's fine. It's never the end. Nothing is ever the end. Nothing is ever the end. There's no finality in life until you die. There is no finality. Again, thinking back to my education, corrections were always given as homework. Or stay in at break time and do your corrections. No, why? Why are we punishing children for being human? Why are we punishing them for, we're setting them up for a very unhealthy way of dealing with failure in the future. And failure is inevitable. Mistakes are inevitable. They're human. We make mistakes. The very same teachers that were punishing us for making mistakes, they themselves have made mistakes. Why are we shaming children in it? My kids never get into trouble when they make mistakes.
Okay.
If they don't learn from their mistakes, if they're resistant to learning from their mistakes, that's when the trouble is.
So at the back of that, then, there's a concept you wrote here. I'm gonna try to pronounce it because I did well in English, but my teachers were not nice. Bounce back ability.
Okay, so what I didn't want to create was a word that seemed like it was only adults understand what it means, or it's not something, it's a big concept. I didn't want it to be a big, scary concept with a word like resilience, which is really not a relatable word.
Okay.
It's not something that children use or hear in their life.
Yes.
But the word bounce back kind of is, or it's kind of easier to understand. How do you bounce back? Like a ball goes down and it bounces back up. So it's fine to fall, and how do we bounce back up again? And yeah, you ask them, what kind of ball is fun? The ball that you can't bounce, or the ball that you throw it and bounces back really quickly at you. Those are the fun balls. Those are the interesting, exciting balls. It depends on your age group. You can really kind of play around with it. But bounce back ability is exactly that. How do we pick ourselves up from failure, from making mistakes? And that self-talk is so important. And we talk about mental health, a lot of it is self-talk, and we want to encourage healthy self-talk. A lot of people say, it's, parents become the voice inside a children's head. And I think we do. But I think what's important is for them to discover their own voice. And for them to realize, I am always going to be with myself. Even my parents are not going to be around. My friends are not always going to be around me. I am always the voice. I am always present with myself. Do I, teach them to love themselves, teach them to enjoy their own company. But that voice has got to be a kind voice. And I tell my students this, speak to yourself as if you're your own best friend. Or imagine what your best friend would say to you if you said to them, I'm so terrible at maths. I'm so terrible at swimming. What would your own best friend say to you in that circumstance? Would they be mean to you like how you're being mean to yourself? Or would they be encouraging? Would they be kind? Would they be helpful? And creating that narrative in their own self-talk. But I think we can draw on our own experiences as adults today and figure, what are we struggling with today? What issues do I have with making mistakes? How resilient am I?
Yeah.
And our kids see that. They see that.
The nice thing about small children, and also just me being on a journey of self-awareness and trying to develop myself and being in tune and really listening. The thing about kids, we mentioned football a lot and fathers in sports, right? I think the first time I took them to sports, I was so frustrated, obviously, because I'm a father and I'm expecting too much, but I then realized that, these guys, number one, they've never done this before. They're new to this. It's a new environment. They're not going to catch on a game of football or any other game as quickly as I think they should, if they catch on at all, But I seen kids, when you see kids grow, and I remember, and these are simple things, right, that fathers can also touch into. I remember, like, these people at some point couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't eat. And when they were young, I genuinely thought it's going to take a long time until they can do things for themselves. And then you see it, So now that's my mantra with them all the time when things are frustrating. Remember that time you couldn't tie your shoelaces, right? What did we do? We practiced.
Yeah.
So I seen this guy's, like, he couldn't write, he was struggling, he couldn't hold a pen, and I was getting frustrated, And then one day he just came, he just wrote his name. I was like, whoa, dude, that's amazing. So it's all of that, right? That there's examples that you are resilient, and if you go through whatever this phase is, and if you go through it with your kid and you guys, you practice it or whatever it is, eventually they'll get it, because just kids are just wired that way, And I think it's us that forget that we as parents ourselves have been resilient, because you've gotten through whatever you've gotten through to get to where you are, and at work, personal or whatever, and you need to be able to remind yourself of those moments as you go through it. And so I wanted to ask you this, right? Talking about self-talk and so forth now in relation and talking to parents also. Something that caught my eye that I've never ever heard before. You said that parents should talk to their kids about select issues that we face, ask their advice. it helps to see things from their perspective too. I've never heard that before. This is new. Have you have any parents implemented this before? Because I've never ever even heard a parent say, you know what, I asked my 14-year-old what they thought. Is this something that you've seen being practiced before, or is this a theory?
I practice it myself.
Yeah?
And it is, let me tell you, the rewards of that are doublefold. Number one, you're giving your child the sense of importance. So we spoke about agency, right?
Yeah.
You're actually empowering them to see that what they have to say is important. And it makes a difference, right? Because a lot of children wander through and they're like, oh, people will only start listening to me when I'm older. People will only start listening to me when I'm qualified, what qualifies me right now? But, we say, oh, make children feel important. But do we really do that? How are we doing that? We tell them, oh, you're important. You mean the world to me. I'll do anything for you. But how are they important to us? More than, oh, I love your cuddles and I'm so happy you're my child and whatever. How are they? Give them an opportunity to serve us in a way that they can feel that what they have to say is important. So that's how you start building that realization in them that, they have agency, they have say in an impact on others, and actually really carefully consider it. So I'll tell you, I started this when my children were 6 and 3. And I started the Kites for Peace events. And I would just ask them, what do you think would be great to have at this event? And they and it was silly things. Hey, we should have that. And as much as I could and as much as it was practical, I would do it.
Okay.
And it was important for them to see that what they had to say, they made a meaningful contribution. And, after the event, I'd say, hey, that idea you had for the candy floss machine, or that idea, that was great.
Yeah.
That was a really great idea. So it doesn't have to be important things. Let them feel like they are contributing something. Let them feel like they are winning, like they're important, like their contribution is important, because it is. And once they start having that assumption that what I have to say is it's of value, they will start making more valuable contributions in class, in social groups. They'll start developing this idea that what they have to say is important.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the first step in leadership, in teaching them leadership, that they can make impact. So they shouldn't be shying away and waiting for somebody to hand them a title or hand them a qualification to say, okay, now you can step up and say something. Now we're going to listen to you. So it's difficult because, the rest of the time they're at school and what they have to say maybe isn't meaningful. Maybe it isn't a contribution to anything. But where they feel that they actually do have importance, or where they can have influence on things around them. As recently as the beginning of this year, I sat down and with my 14-year-old, and I said to him, I was speaking about this academic enrichment course that I'm building. And I mean, it's been great. As you know, I came in December, and I did that. I did it at the camp with you guys. That was amazing. And there's been a great response to it. But the places that I really wanted to have this implemented here were resistant, I think, mainly because of syllabus deadlines. We've got coursework to get through. We don't have time. We don't have time and resources to add to add this, and it was incredibly frustrating. It was now challenging in my career. I'm like, I really want to impact this group. I really want to impact people in this sector. And because of constraints, I can't. And it was really, really frustrating. And I said, maybe, the value isn't seen. And I think that's very much what it was at that time. It was, what's important in the content. We get through all this, all the stuff in the syllabus and all this continuous assessment that we have. And I mean, I understand it. I'm a teacher and we're always chasing deadlines. But it's, so my son said to me, what if you offered it as a debate club? And I said, explain, what do you mean? He says, well, all the things that you're teaching, you're teaching conflict resolution, you're teaching negotiation, you're teaching communication, you're teaching public speaking, you're teaching all of these things. Why can't you teach that under the umbrella of a debate club? Because everybody knows what a debate club is. Everybody knows what public speaking is, but you try and go in to a sector that doesn't know what enrichment is or life coaching or academic skills development is. You're throwing new words at them, but everybody knows what debate is. It's simple to understand. And I thought, wow, has this kid literally just, and so I didn't even wait. I picked up the phone, I called the head, and I said, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if we had a debate club? And he says, I would love to have a debate club. It's absolutely perfect. Yes, let's start it. Can you start? Let's start at the beginning of the term. It was accepted, right? And he was absolutely right.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it. And again, all these things that I was dying to teach these students that I knew that they really read it, I'm teaching it now under all it needed was rebranding. And it's been accepted, and I'm getting the impact. I'm making the impact I want to. I'm getting the effects of it that I wanted. In that these children are now becoming better public speakers. They're becoming more confident. They're building their confidence. They're building resilience. The bounce back ability. All these things are all teachable. All I needed to do was that. And it took my 14-year-old to tell me from his perspective what he thought about it.
Wow.
So he made me think like a teacher, which is what I needed to do.
Yeah.
In order to get it adopted by the teens who, I mean, we're maxed out in our debate club. It's there's so many kids wanting to join. We probably have to add more sessions or whatever because the need for it is there. The parents have bought in. The school has bought in because they can see the value of that. It's tried and tested. It's not they don't have the capacity to add a whole new thing. But they can add something that's tried and trusted, So, this kids solved it for me.
Okay.
And it's great. That's what I'm saying. So that's the thing is you actually get perspective. What is wrong with asking our children for their perspective?
Wow.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, that's a beautiful concept. I hope fathers are listening.
Yeah. Ask them for their help. They are little professionals in certain things. I mean, even if you're having issues with someone at work, speak to them and say, I think this guy, it feels to me like this guy doesn't understand me, or this guy's always, how do you think I should handle it? How do you handle it at school?
Yeah.
If somebody does that to you.
They have a lot to share.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they've got a lot. And they'll say, oh, this happened and that happened. And, this is the way you should feel. And in a way, because they want to also be teachers. They want to be leaders. Give them an opportunity, So
awesome.
Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, I'll try it with my 7-year-old.
Try.
And my niece.
Try.
I mean, I've got a 14-year-old niece. She's always keen to talk. And she's switched on. So
oh, really?
I've just never asked her for advice. Like, that's awesome. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, we've run out of time for this one.
Okay.
But
Okay.
in closing, though, I mean, I think there's a lot more things that you and I can talk about in future episodes. But in closing,
So
in just your role as an educator and having come across parents and their approach to their children's education, what is the one thing that you think as fathers can do more of or better of in our children, in assisting our children's development?
building that confidence is not as difficult as we think it is. Again, that asking them for their advice, making them feel important, making them feel like they are someone. I think it starts with us, and we are role models. Mothers, there are some mothers that do it all. So for single mothers, this is not to say that they necessarily, but whether you're a father, whether you're an uncle, a cousin, if you've got that, we cannot do everything ourselves. We do need help.
Yeah.
And it's a balance, we need that balance. Everything in nature has that balance. I've said before, it takes a village to raise a child. We need men and women and their strengths to have that balance for our daughters. Her role is very, very important in building our children. And when we talk about legacy, it's more than just worrying about how much money we're going to leave them, generational wealth. That's the buzzword. Are we leaving generational wealth to our children? But it's more. There are. I don't want to say it's more important, but equally important to leaving that legacy of money and wealth. It's also leaving them a legacy of values. Building core memories with them that will really serve them in the darkest of their times, in the future. When they are sad, I mean, these things we can't avoid. When they are sad, when they are things aren't going their way, they will always have those memories to remember. Yeah. I had, or I have that love. That love was always present for me. There was involvement. I was given a sense of importance. I am important. So you kind of give them that self-worth, that idea of self. You plant that seed of self-worth from now, and it will see them through the darkest times of their future. And these things are as important as leaving them wealth. And I know that fathers are breaking their backs to make it in this terrible economy that we're having. But I don't want to challenge traditional roles, but I want to say there are other things that we can be doing, as well as providing. We can provide guidance. We can provide mental fortitude. Yes. These are all these value adds that we can give to our children, invaluable gifts. So fathers are very, very, very important. Men, stepfathers, uncles, grandfathers, whoever. If you have within your circle of influence, if you have children, young people, young adults, even that you can mentor and you can talk to, you are very, very important. And I think, this podcast is a great place. Your listeners already have that idea and they already know the importance of that. So I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but we need to get more men involved.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. We appreciate your time and your addition to our content, and a lot of it was super valuable, particularly that bit about bringing them into your world. And I really like that idea because when I was young, and I know a lot of fathers were like this, you were not to be heard as a kid, you know. You come in and then you go play outside. I do not remember, even just in household affairs, right? You can even include them in simple things like groceries or smaller things where they can participate, you know. When we go buy furniture, what do you think about this? How would it work? So even practical things like where they can see it actually manifesting in their own household. So thank you for that. That one I'm gonna definitely practice as in this weekend.
I look forward to this feedback on that, Sebo.
Thank you so much to our guest for taking the time to share their story. In fact, thank you to all the guests for coming on to this podcast. And a big shout out to our engineer, Unati Ngubeni, for pulling the show together. Most importantly, thank you to you, our loyal listener. None of this is possible without you. If you haven't already, before you leave, please rate the content and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any updates. Until next time, hola.